Hello and welcome to our third week of the Artist Focus. Today I am here with Lobil and I am transmitting to you from the ancestral homelands of the Celtic people or the Celtic people. Um, and we um, and out of sight resides on the homeland, on the ancestral homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Adawa, the Ojibwe, and the Potawatomi peoples. It is a great pleasure to be here with Lobil today. And Lobil is a queer second-generation settler born in Tkaronto, Tkaronto, dish with one spoon territory. Law's performances involve body-based experiments to generate intuitive felt research and unique sight-responsive behaviours through spontaneous utterance, impulse-based scores, energetic flows from unconscious content, object manipulation, unexpected humour, and interrelational proposals with the audience. Lowe received the Fado Live Art Award at the Summerworks Performance Art Festival in 2015 and a Kathy Aker Award in 2019. During the pandemic, she has presented video work at Luminato Festival online in 2020 and facilitated online ensemble practices for the visual arts through the School of the Alternative in North Carolina, where I was born.
No way!
That's another story. The Laboratory for Artistic Intelligence in Toronto, Le Parc Performing Arts Research Cluster at Concordia University, and the Centre de Création au Vertigo in Montreal. In real life, she has presented performance interventions at conferences, including Hemispheric Institutes in Cuantro, Mexico, Performance Philosophy Intervention as Intoxication in Amsterdam, and at Northwestern University in Chicago, and Sick Theories at the University of Toronto. Lowe has shown her solo work at performance art venues, including 7A 11D, 7A Star 11D, don't forget the star, Duration and Dialogue, Rhubarb Performance Festival, Panoply Lab, and the Month of Performance Art in Berlin, which we seem to have both been present at. Maybe in different years though. But lovely to be here today. We're going to start by sharing two videos. One piece that Lobil did in 2017, and then a more recent video from 2020. Do you want to say anything about these two pieces before we jump in, or?
Thank you. No, I maybe just let the work speak for itself, but just coming from that idea of, I guess just critiquing the theater. I see the theater as a site. So the first piece is in a theater, but I see that is site-specific work, and I'm trying to critique something of the being in that site as a site. So anyway, just wanted to note that.
Yes, that is a little seed to get us into the conversation. So.
Yeah. shapes? Shapes in the house? I had a question though. What shape is that? It's no shape. Small shape. It's fucking small shape. No. I'm sorry for babies in the house. I'm sorry. It's a triangle. I really like triangles. I wasn't going to talk so much. I was going to let the objects speak for themselves. It's a balloon that somebody has put into the space, and I would like to honor the knowledge of the balloon that has taken itself this far to become part of one ounce balloon. Thank you. I just release into the balloon. Contact dancing right here. The shape of the thing. This is a mess. This is string. Try again. This is string. String. Bungee. Not good enough. So I was thinking about Chuck Close, you know, the American realist painter, and he worked a lot with grids. And I thought this could be a grid. That's what this could be, because I don't know what this is. It's supposed to be inside and outside of shapes. That's the score, but I don't know what it is yet. So I was thinking about Chuck Close and how he made this grid, right? So I thought every time someone plunks this, what it is a cigar box with some metal and some bobby pins. So somebody is a volunteer, a willing volunteer. You can pass it down the line. I don't mind. Anybody's great at this. I know you are. Right? So what the deal is, you plunk, right? This is the next grid square. This is the next square. And you hit it again, but you have to hit it louder because otherwise I won't know when the next square is coming. Not to be bossy or anything. This is not even a precise square, but you know, Chuck, he makes portraits, and I was thinking that if this was a portrait of me, you know, it could be like in the grid. That's the next one I heard. Next square. This is the top of the mistakes. This is for Brandon. This is for all the colors in the world. Knew a pillow was so fierce. Hey. 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 Thank you. This is a cloud, actually. I invite you to stand on the cloud with me. Come, please. It's a good idea. How often do you get asked to stand on a cloud? Yeah. More. Come more, someone. More, you can fit more on this cloud. No? I'm sorry. I should be having my own piece, but I'm inviting people because I think they're really cool. Put me on a cloud. Can you see me? Can you see me? It's like we're on Zoom. There was for me a panic around what is the right thing to do when I don't know anything except the feeling that something is wrong. Whoa. Speak.
Oh, look, the avalanche in the leaves.
Yeah. And the curtains.
Oh, I see you reflect. See?
Oh, yeah. That is pretty interesting. Yeah. Wow. Am I?
Okay. Okay.
Where's Ed? There's Ed.
There's Ed.
Ed, be careful. Nicole, be careful.
It's like aliens.
I know. There's 3 Nicoles. That's so weird. But no, I can't get Lena. There. So hello. I'm hiding behind the technology.
Roger, Henry, yes.
Wow. Thank you. Oh, I still have 22 seconds. Someone's timer went off. Oh well. Okay. So thank you for all for participating in that experiment. But I recommend the avalanche. It's a good way to wake up. Thank you for showing those clips. That was fun for me to watch too. Oh, I can't hear you.
Thank you for reminding me to switch off my mic.
I don't think I switched off mine, so you heard me laughing during. Oh well.
It just fused in with the audience's laugh.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
So since I have a bit of a cheeky question to ask you. To start off with, I'm intrigued to know, your artist name is Lobil, all in lowercase, and I have a special artist persona name, and so I was wondering, what is the meaning? What inspired you to create that Lobil as an artist name?
Yeah, it's very close to my own name. So my full birth name is Laura Bill. So I always just say that the ra is silent. I break it into the sounds, so low and ra, and the ra is silent. And I think for me that kind of relates to a sense of a kind of being with, always fighting against a sense of not having a voice and trying to find a voice. And but the lowercase is also like a little bit of hiding, a little bit diminutive, a little bit just like a visual kind of the way it sits and looks with the smaller letters I like. My last name is also, it's interesting. It relates to, I have this mythology that I was told that the length of my grandparents were from Poland, and I was told that the length of the last name designates the social status. So if you come into some money, you can become an Ofsky or something and add some letters to your name. But our last name was Bill. It was like so short. So I don't know what it means, but it's probably just, just some kind of common worker. And so I thought that was interesting in terms of keeping that in my name. But the other thing I was thinking about was just the fact that it may be contributing to my low income, because I'm like, am I manifesting this by keeping this name? Like, is this dangerous?
Yes, I know. I did.
I gotta sign up for the high bill,
Yes.
And also there's something fun too when people say hi, low, and they kind of have a laugh, and because I like laughter and I feel it helps start a conversation when somebody sort of says that and realizes, oh, I kind of made a joke. Did you get it? It's just like, it's very sweet and endearing. So I kind of kept using that name, even though I feel like maybe it's not great to keep this kind of diminutive aspect, but it definitely has a history with me. So I'm happy to wear it proudly. Low bells. Yeah.
Well, there is, using lower cases is a political statement. And, there are many writers. I'm particularly thinking of, and her name is escaping me right now, which is dreadful. Famous writer who uses all of lower cases. Do you know what?
I'm not sure of the her part, but I know E.E. Cummings was. I always loved E.E. Cummings, and also a local poet is Bill Bissett, and Bill was like a sound artist with the Four Horsemen, I believe. But anyway, Bill was also using lowercase, and I always love to echo the spirit of his work.
Yeah, because it kind of resonates with this idea of equity as well, which I think, I really wanted to talk to you actually about how you're thinking about these hierarchical. Let me go to my questions.
You haven't
because I get lost as well, like thinking about how you are collapsing the narrative structure, and how do you integrate your own subjectivity and humor into the process of making a performance? So really thinking about like your process, especially kind of in relation to procedure A and how you went about devising that score.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so complicated because everything that I'm doing is following on what I have just done, and so it's always in a kind of progression. I very much see my artwork as a processing of life. So answering the questions that I have in life through my art making is really important to me. And with, I think what happened just before I was making the work that you saw was actually a little research for a bigger work that was called Procedures, Audiences, Knife. And just before I proposed that piece, I was feeling very unstable in terms of like, I was working in this way where you know, people were showing up to places with a very perfected piece. And I wanted to work with a very minimal, like approach things in a more minimal way. And just what is the least that I need to know in order to show up and perform, you know? So it's kind of, it came from a sense of grief also, that kind of minimal way of working. It also came from like, I was working a lot with the archive and with excess actually. So I have like a whole history of 30 years of journal writing and 30 boxes, and I build structures with these boxes and played in the, and I did for 7A, 11D, like an 11-hour durational work, moving through these papers and restructuring them and reorganizing them into different kind of worlds. But then I wanted to go to Berlin and I couldn't bring my archive with me. So I started working with more minimal things. Like, what about just moving until I find something that feels like an anchor and just repeating that gesture until something comes. And I've always used language in my work. I feel that, you know, the voice is a body part, and it's the performance is an action, but the language is kind of a sign in the system. It's a sign of something happening internally that kind of connects the mind and the body. I mean, the mind and the body are always connected, but in terms of like an external gesture, I feel like it's constitutive of like just a reflection of an inner life, but in like as a sign. So I kind of just kind of put the sign in space and let that kind of create a feedback loop where the word generates movement and the movement generates language. And I'm just kind of feeling and thinking through the moment with those materials, the energy flow in the body, the sense of impulse, the word and how that lands. And so all those things in the mix, I decided to work within this kind of minimal frame. And then I went and I did this piece at Summer Works where I literally was just like, I was preparing by noticing what I know in order to arrive at the performance with what I don't know, to know only what I don't know, to leave behind all the ideas, all the images I had generated, and to meet the audience in that kind of vulnerable way of like, I did all this work, now what? You know, like now it's a new moment. I've never been in this situation with these people, and let's just go, you know? So preparation for me is like gathering objects that I like the texture of, the shape, the something about it is activating for me. So I bring those objects into the room, and then I just begin. And for me, physicalization is always a way to just begin. and a lot of times also the physicalization involves like welcoming people into the room, or hi, how you doing? I see you, you see me, we're here together, you know, that kind of stuff that's feels really like heartful. It gets me into and also like people are used to that, so we're going to go on this wild ride, but we're going to say hi first so that we can like really feel like we're together on this, you know. It's also kind of feeling through what are people bringing into the room, and yeah, but so I was working in this way that was quite minimal, but then I was feeling like I have nothing to do anymore. Like, I mean, there's nothing to do. So how do I even make proposals? You know, so I kind of lost my sense of like grounding, you know, like I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Actually, what am I standing here for? Like, this is terrifying. You know? Like, so, anyway, so then I came up with this idea of like procedures. I need procedures. I need procedures. And if I have procedures, if I can like methodologize my way into the next proposal, let's do that, you know? So but I wanted to keep in mind this sense of like confusion or lostness or not knowing, to keep that alive. I kind of gave myself like silly kind of procedures, you know, like procedures, loving procedures. Like I did a lot of one-to-one. I'd have a conversation with somebody, and we were in a kind of video conversation where we would chit chat, and then we would try to make something that relates to our conversation in the video. So I collected all these videos. I sent out surveys to people. I got lots of answers, and I arranged all the answers by alphabetical from the first word. I chopped all that up and made like found poetry, which was used in that procedure A performance. And then so I did all those little things. I collected objects again and brought them to the theater. And then, yeah, the same thing before I came. So doing that performance that you saw in the video was very much about like just generating more material. Like, what are we doing here, and how do we be in this site as a site of activation? How do we be in this building, in this architecture, in this framing, this theater as a history? And, you know, so how do we kind of just be together? And so objects are really a big part of my world. And I think that, you know, I share the space with the objects. I very much, and that's why also when you were talking about like the lowercase, I think that's also related to, you know, me sharing space with the objects, because they all have lower cases, you know. Anyway, but I think, yeah, in the moment before that performance, I have to say, like, let everything go, let the big idea, fuck it, like, let's just begin, you know, begin here, begin now. And I saw this blue bucket, so I just took the bucket, and I'm like,
I was going to mention the blue bucket. I thought we can't escape the blue bucket.
Yeah, it's such a gift. And it was just like right there, you know, and I was like, bucket, it's you and me all the way, you know. We're gonna do this. And so Bucket came with me, and we started the show together, and it felt really good to be able to grab the moment in that physical way, like in the material way of taking the bucket. And it's got such a great texture and sound, and, you know, it's so lovely. So, but then I went on from that. I just gathered energy and lovely heart energy from everybody who was there, and then took it into the next layer. And I made a bunch of more little videos, and then I was at Harbourfront, and I guess I had about 7 days in the theater. It was more of a theater, so I had 7 days there. So I saw each day as kind of like a practice performance, and I just worked for the objects. I worked for the moment, for the duration. And, you know, on the last day there, more people came, and we had more of a, you know, but I always want to be ready to be in conversation with the audience. So I'm sorry, I'm monologuing right now, Karen.
No,
I'm like talking about being in conversation.
I do wonder though, and this is just a little detail, but just to kind of ground it all, was the moment on the pillow
Oh yeah.
Did that come out of the video dialogues that you had with the 10 people as part of the research to make that, to make procedure A?
Yeah.
Or did that just spontaneously come out in the moment?
I think it just came out in the moment. There was another performance I did in Banff it was like a residency, and I did a piece where I got as many people to stand on a pillow as I could, but I don't know if that was before or after. I can't actually remember the timing of that, but I think that might have been after. But definitely it came out of the, I don't know, how do I just interrupt the flow of what's happening, and inviting people into the space with me is just such a nice way to do that, to change the dynamic. And
yeah, I think, what I've been really touched with, watching a lot of your work is this way in which, I as an audience, and actually Beau Coleman is referring to that in the chat. She says, I love your leaps of faith with the audience, and she makes a funny comment about it may be a prayer for low bills, when we were talking about your name. But, this idea of, like, there's a real kind of element of poeticism that sticks with the audience in the aftermath of your work. And you construct these eclectic scores that travel, that are sparked through spontaneous inspiration, but through a lot of research, to develop this dialogue and to create this narrative. And I'm, thinking about the piece that you did with for the Flow, Embody and Sight performance, which was about, homeless, the sense of home, and, going from the privilege to the homelessness to the precarity, and how these elements, really stick with the audience through a poetic framework. So, I'm wondering how you how are you thinking about the construction of language as material in your work? Because it kind of has this capacity to physically enfold the audience's body. And I'm wondering how you are thinking about that.
wow, okay, I think I wrote something about maybe. Yeah, I think what is coming to mind right now, Karen, is that we share language. Like we were talking yesterday about different, how different we all are, how different everything is, how we think we know things, but they're actually living a very different life than we think. So it's for me, it's like language it's kind of an anchor in space, but it has a lot of trajectories in terms of what we think it might mean, or what it means to me. And it has a deep root in each of us as we've learned the language and we've used these words. And so I think it's this really abstracted kind of element that we're all playing with all the time. That's so beautiful, but it also like opens up different possibilities in you than it does. And you're a poet also, so each word that I'm saying is landing with you in very different ways and opening up all kinds of different poems that I have never read or experienced. So I think that's why, like in that procedure A video, it's like, this is a bucket and this is a pillow and this is it's like this is what we call it, but it has its own life. Like, do we really know what the bucket is? Like, well, I don't know. Anyway, it's just calling into mind that the language is just a little prop also, or a little needle into the whole tapestry of what we're living and what we're breathing. And and everything means so much, so many things to so many people, and every little word can really open up things for people. Yeah, and I think just in terms of score, like, because a score for me is like an articulation of something also. Score can be like, what am I working on today? Score can be like, be with the audience. A score can be move across the room back and forth until something arrives, So for me, a score is a kind of a linguistic anchor, but I like to imagine them in ways that they actually point to some kind of unknowing, or some kind of mysterious envelope, So I'm not sure what the score will open up, but it's a sentence or a linguistic kind of propeller or engine or driver, maybe you could say, like, that will allow me to at least have something, And I think that maybe that's what, with all the precarity I was experiencing and wanting to take things away from me and minimize and be, but then there's always some kind of language that's hanging around, or that pops up, or that comes mysteriously, sneaks under the wire and occurs to me in the moment. And it's just delightful to utter those things. Sometimes that comes to mind when we're talking to people, but we don't maybe feel the context is correct to utter those things. But performance, we have this freedom to just like say anything, Wow, what a cool freedom, I can just say blah, and you're gonna like eat it up, I mean, I don't know. Or you're gonna go like, oh, you have a sound back. I don't know. It just seems to me like, yeah.
Yeah, well, it was interesting, when you're talking about, the connection between the sound of the word and the body, and this connection, Christiva talks about this cora, and I'm interested in the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in the body, connecting the voice to the heart, and how you use the for you as well, the movement becomes integrated with the text, and almost, there's this kind of mutual relationship, but in a way you're shifting the ground, because the audience, we have no idea, you have no idea, and yet it's in this theater space where these scripted people work in very controlled forms, and you're throwing that all out of the window and just going in with an open possibility. And I think it's allowing the work to breathe in a different way. But I want to talk about this, and thinking about this as do you think that this process of unknowing is a queer aesthetic or a feminist aesthetic, and how are you drawing on that and thinking about how we queer public spaces, and I was thinking, when I was thinking about that this morning, I was thinking about how I grew up in the north of England, in a lesbian family, and it was a time when homosexuality was illegal, and all the lesbians and all the gay men got together to fight Clause 28, and putting all those people in the room was actually very difficult.
Wow,
So is this when we talk about queering public space, you know, is there a lesbian aesthetic to this? Or, you know, is it a lesbian feminist aesthetic? Or, you know, where do you situate? How are you thinking about these terms?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that I think it's queering to actually question or de-hierarchize the concept of aesthetic. So me in a body with a history doing something has something comes off that. There's a look to that, the things that I do. There's a look to, you know, any kind of action. And that's the aesthetic for me. You know, the aesthetic is not something from the outside that I'm trying to put on, not to disavow any of the people who are working in that way, because I also love that work, you know. But for me, it's like, I mean, I do see myself as a visual artist, even though I'm working with these other forms, and it's not like I'm not starting with the image. I'm doing things in the way that feels like I feel like as human beings, in our psychology, we always have this kind of narrative structures that are happening. We have images, we have, you know, there's so much already going on. So how do we like externalize that? And what does it look like when we externalize that? That's the aesthetic. I just see that as like a flipping of the, you know, like in terms of queer studies too, it's like, it's not what's right and what's not right. It's like, what are the people compelled to do? That's what should be allowed. Like, what are these rules that, like, the structure of our engagement with one another has to be coming from who are we as people. Like, I even think about it in terms of the migrants right now. It's like people are migrating because they have their home is unstable. So we have to acknowledge that these are people, and this is the way the world is right now. Like, it's not, let's put up these borders. Like, I know
And we have to also understand our historical and contemporary as well responsibility in creating the instability.
yeah,
And I think that conversation is often lost, you know, in
Yeah.
these conversations, you know. But yes, this idea of radical freedom and radical liberty, you know, to actually, you know, and that brings me to, you know, when you did the piece on the bike in public space for the Flow Symposium, and you were doing a rehearsal, and you got stopped by the police, and you know you know, it was quite, and that was right at the time when there was a lot of new legislation being put in to really kind of restrict people's behavior in public space.
Mhm.
You know, as you're, you know, in creating that specific work in public space, how did that engage in these concepts of liberty for you, you know? Or radical, and a radicalization of the performance form.
Yeah, I think that just like the technology that you introduced us to in terms of live stream, thank you for that kind of conduit into that world, because it did kind of put the question in terms of like, you know, I can literally travel through the city and be with this technology, and this can allow me to transfer something a different kind of trajectory, a different scale, a different sense of scope and flow and movement through space and time. And yeah, I felt like the technology was my interlocutor big time in that. I mean, I also felt like the presence of other people online, and maybe I was glitching in and out, but there's something about that too that kind of speaks to my questions around hiding or around, you know, being present or not being present. But I felt like the technology was such an interlocutor, like such a partner in crime on the journey there, and how that affected the look and feel. You know, how did it? Because in my work, I'm also really interested in how to activate the audience body. Like I also feel that like we're on this journey together, and really focus on what you're feeling and noticing, and let the aesthetic come from that. Let your sense of perceiving the aesthetic come from what you feel in your body. And I think that includes also like these glitchy bits in the technology, you know, like there is a look and feel. I think in the video that you played, when I said that little part where I'm like, it's like we're on Zoom, you know, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Because everybody at that time, when I made that, everybody was saying that. And it was so hilarious to me. It was such a poem, you know, it was such a gift of like, when do we ever get to say that in life? Like, can you hear me? Can you hear me? You know, and like people are saying that all over town right now, like all over the world. Like, wow, technology, big up, like, fuck, that's wonderful, you know? People are like, can you hear me? I can hear you, you know. Like I'm like, oh my God, technology, thank you. But you know, also, ooh, technology, you're a dangerous being. But you know, anyway, so I think that's also part of what we're experiencing now. Everybody is like just noticing that the aesthetic is part of the flow of life, you know, like letting it be that what it is, letting it be what it is. And I think, you know, there's a lot of mindful technique and stuff around just noticing what things are. And, you know, I think maybe it's coming from that a little bit, but I also just think it's coming from a desire to do what the fuck I want and like, let that live and have a life. And, you know, as a being, like, can I not just do what the fuck I want? No, I need to wear a mask. Okay. I also have this sense of responsibility in terms of like, we're actually here for each other. Like we can't get away from that. So I do feel like there's this kind of radical freedom that we might have in a performance space. And I say it like that because of course, freedom is so different for different people and different methods or systems of oppression and stuff. But I also feel a big sense of responsibility. Like and I think that also is like speaks to the desire for interrelationality in my work. Like it's like I'm always coming back to the fact you are here. I need to keep the audience safe. I need to go crazy right now. Let me please. Can you see me? You can see me. I'm okay. You know, like I always want to check in with the audience to go, okay, I haven't lost my mind, but let's just get back to business here. You know, like let's have fun. So I think there's part of me that is always like ready to rock out, but then there's always, you know, that sense of responsibility. Like we are here together in the space, like, and that's the objects are with us. You know, we're here. It's ceremony. It's spiritual. You know, it's a heightened sense of visibility for all of us, and in those performance spaces. So let's acknowledge that. You know, I always want to acknowledge that, and like I'm big on like why, you know, it's important to wear masks and to be responsible to those who are, you know, immunocompromised, and like, let's stop this virus now, you know, that we don't want any more people dying. I mean, so I also am keeping, and I feel like that's also queer too, because like that sense of like, yeah, I want to do what I want, but I also need community to be with, to be in solidarity with, and to be like we are, you know, networked in a way that you know, we're co-constitutive, we are co-creating worlds together, and we can't not you know, can't dismiss that, because that would be so so unfortunate, you know, to have a life without feeling that sense of responsibility to one another and that care, that the tender freedom, you know, the freedom to be in our hearts in the way that we want, but also in solidarity or in respect of others, you know. So I think all those entanglements, and it comes back to language. What language are we using, you know? And so, I mean,
Well,
I'm
I
working
think,
in a minimal way, but it's maximal in terms of the entanglements, you know. Sorry to interrupt.
yes, no, I think, you know, you bring up, you know, with freedom comes responsibility and care, but it also, with freedom also, you know, we have to take risks. And, you know, my big concern at the moment, just on an intellectual level, is the public. Are we going to be able to exit out of pandemic times without fear? Because fear has become such a part of the vocabulary. And I think this is when, you know, your kind of the way in which you're utilizing an embodied practice with words, with sound, etc., you know, becomes an important tool, you know, almost for us to use to, you know, and again, that goes back to care, you know, care for the body, you know, and activating the heart as well, you know, in that process. So, I think there's a great book that I want to read that just came out by Maggie Nelson called
Oh,
Freedom.
oh yeah.
And it's specifically talking about these, the, you know, how can we think about freedom? You know, and I was having a conversation with Marilyn Arsom about, you know, how do we create a practice that is holistic? You know, and when we're thinking about radical work and radical and spaces for difference, and you know, it is about that co-responsibility, the co-care, and I love how you're articulating all of that and thinking about that in the relational experience within the black box. I want to open it up to questions from the audience. I've got a, we could, you know, talk a lot. This is fascinating, you know, important. But yeah, so are there any questions from the audience that you would like to type in? And I
While we're waiting for questions, I wanted to go back to this thought that you said about the pillow and how that would have come from the video conversations. And you know, Karen, I would not have noted, I didn't even note that. Like, it's so interesting also how we do things, like our body has so many more stories than we even know, you know. Like, you made that connection, and even in when you asked it, I was like, oh no, I don't, you know. But now I'm like, she's so right, that came from that. Like, I'm not even making the connections because it's the picture is always so full. Like, as performance artists, we always have so many layers we're looking at and integrating. It's like, where did that come from? I don't know, you know. Like, it's so funny because, but you saw it and that you mentioned it, and this discourse has opened up to me. Oh yeah, that is helpful. Like, just how this, even the artist focus, it's like helping to integrate these things, you know. Like, this conversation is so special, so thank you.
thank you. Well, it's been such a treat to dive into your work and, you know, absorb it, you know. And there's a question from Beau in the chat. Hello, Beau. Lovely you could join us today. She says, you have an incredible sense of timing. Have you done any clown training?
Yeah, I come from a clown training, actually. I really do. And I'm calling my work as kind of a clown compass right now, where I feel like there was always a sense of like the clown training that I did is very much about self-sourcing and intuitive work. It's coming from more of a Native Canadian perspective, the pachinko style, but I have studied other styles like the Gaulier work and a variety, something from Brazil and something from Cuba, and so a variety of different clown trainings. But for me, what sort of stands out as really useful and helpful in the sphere of performance art is this intuitive impulse driven work, but like actually clown work itself is very specific, and like it's about actually precision in a way. So I've kind of thrown away a little bit of the precision, but Beau, thank you for the question, because maybe the thing is that from the clown training, I have discovered something about timing that still lives in my body, that even though I think I'm throwing it out the door, it's still there, So it could be that. But I think the reason why clown training is really great for, as you say, timing, like the fact that you just made that connection, for me, it's coming to mind is that because you have the laughter, it's almost like a reward, like Pavlovian kind of reward system. You do something, no one laughs. You do something, no one laughs. You do something, they all laugh. Yay, I will do that again. I register in my mind, So it may be that sense like of doing clown work for at least 10 years, specifically that work in that sort of genre, that probably that has honed my sensibilities. So now I can be just kind of offhanded about it, and I'll still respond. My body's still responding in those ways. So thank you for that question. Yeah, I hadn't connected that, but yeah, this question of timing is really, really interesting. Yeah. And like the body response system, because I'm thinking more about like, how does the body respond? Like being in front of an audience, it's like, well, what am I supposed to do? What are you looking at me for? Like there's so much packed into, and the habits come up, the habits. So maybe you might call it timing, but I just call it bad habits.
Oh, no. It's very good timing. Very good timing. So unfortunately, if there are no more questions, we're actually got to the end of our artist focus with lobil today. In the conversation, we were talking about how lobil creates a poeticism that is about shifting ground in the complexity of the scores that she employs to really kind of engage the audience in these intimate moments. I think you build an intimate relationship with the entire audience before as they enter into the space. So it becomes this this real kind of extended conversation with a whole group, and this collapsing of hierarchy, and really thinking about employing a lot of research which engages in talking to different people, inventing different processes, but then entering the unknown space of the performance and really kind of utilizing spontaneous and you use this wonderful word, the clown compass, to really create the spontaneity and the sense of surprise in the work. And I just want to highlight next week's artist focus. We are going to be in conversation with, I'm just going to take myself off here, with Emily Franciscan. And this conversation might well might be in French with Martine Vial. We're still debating on how we deal with translation. So that is happening for the next Artist Focus. And then we also have an exciting program of live stream public performances with Experimental Sound Studio this coming Friday, October the 1st, which will be 4 p.m. at Chicago time and 2300 hours, 11 p.m. European Central Time. And Beata Lena from Germany will be performing. Beau Coleman, who's in the room with us today, thank you for joining us, will be creating a performance. And Surya Tuchler from Hamburg, Germany, and Yvette T1 from the Netherlands. So that's this coming Friday, October the 1st at 4 p.m. Chicago time. And also starting on October the 1st, Martine Vial and myself are working in collaboration to create a public performance workshop where we will provide the workshop participants a live stream training for public performance. That will happen in the first 4 workshops. And then in the second 4 workshops with Martine Vial, the workshop participants will be able to use those live streaming skills to create and share public performances in the moment in Martine's workshop. So I do hope you sign up for that. You can find out more details about that on the Flow Symposium website that I'm typing in the chat. Just go to the Open Flow program and you can find more details about that there. And lastly, oops, let me turn this off, go to my banners, my brand. But thank you all for joining us today. And thank you for tuning in and hope to see you sometime this week. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.